Hi there. Does your Mac look like this? Well, mine does. Let's see if we can get it fixed. Okay, so I have two problems. So one, I have vertical lines on my screen. Two, I'm getting an error code that seems to indicate that the primary hard drive is dead. So I'm going to try and tackle these one at a time. I'm going to see if I can dual boot from my second hard drive, since I do have two. The primary that came with the Mac, and then a secondary SSD that was installed later. So I'm going to try and see if I can install the OS on the SSD and see if that at least will let me boot back into the system, because right now it's not booting at all. It just gets stuck on the little loading bar like that. So I'm going to see if I can get that fixed. Then, if that works, then I'm going to try the graphics card fix, where I'm going to pull the card, put it in the oven for 200 degrees for 8 minutes, and see if that remelts some solder joints. I've heard that can work and fix it. And then I'm going to reinstall it, and hopefully at the end of this I'll have a working Mac that doesn't have lines on the screen and allows me to use it. So we'll see. Okay, so part three, I guess. So yesterday I identified the problem. Looks like I have a hard drive problem and a problem with my graphics card. I'm going to try and tackle the graphics card problem first, because I've tried to start in a recovery mode, and every time I try and do it, I get the little loading bar, but then it just goes to a white screen and does nothing, so I don't get disk utility to come up. So fortunately, today I was able to go out, and Best Buy has curbside pickup, so I was able to acquire some thermal paste. So I'm going to try and do the graphics card fix first, and see if I can get the graphics to fire up, and then I'll worry about tackling the hard drive issue. I also have a separate hard drive as well, so if the actual IDE, or sorry, SATA drive is dead, I do have another SSD around here I could throw in there. So, all right, well, I'll pick up again once I have the iMac. Fortunately, I was able to use my MacBook Pro to get going with the work, but I'll pick up again once the iMac is disassembled and I have the graphics card out of it, and we'll go from there. Okay, so real quick, that's 392 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 200 degrees Celsius, so I just confirmed that. So I have the oven preheating now, and I'll need to take the bezel back off the Mac, and I'll be back with you once the video card is out. Okay, I thought it might be good to show this as well. So I got the bezel off. There are 4 screws along each side that you need to take out. My model is fortunately the one that has the magnets on the side. So the bezel I just used a pick from the iFixit kit to pop the bezel off. And now that the screws are free and sitting on my iFixit pad, I can use this prying tool to gently just pry the screen forward. And then I'll have, I think, 4 or 5 connections just to disconnect for the video, and then for the power and stuff over here. So let me see if I can get this pried open. And all right, so the screen, pry that forward, and then inside you can see we have a bunch of cables on the top there. At the very bottom there, the camera just won't focus. There is one there at the bottom, and then 2 over here as well. All right. Okay, and then once everything's disconnected, then it should look something like this. So top,
bottom, and there's two here. So one for the, I believe this is a power sink, and then this is another one for the display, which it has a little tab you pull up and it disconnects from the motherboard. So I have the bag, fortunately from the iMac. So I'm going to put this display in there, and then I'm going to worry about getting this guy out, because this is the video card right here. So all I should have to do is just take out these screws, and the whole assembly should pull right out, and then I'll be able to disconnect the heatsink. And there's a temperature sensor cable on here as well that has to, we have to disconnect before this will fully come out. And then I should be able to remove the heat pads off the card, the heat sink as well, like I said, and then I should be able to pop it in the oven, see if the melting trick works, let the card cool, apply the thermal compound, and put everything back together, and hopefully it'll work. And then we can look at and see if this hard drive here is actually dead or not. So hopefully not. And if it is, then we'll worry about putting another one in here. So, all right, I'll be back. Okay, so update. It looks like I can't get to these screws directly. So, unfortunately, I have to take the motherboard out. So, I'm starting with, there's a screw over here. There's one, there was one here. There's one there, in the center, there, and two on the side, which I've tried to lay out for myself visually. And it looks like there's one more here under this warranty void sticker. So I'm going to take that out and see if that enables me to take this whole assembly out. Obviously there are a bunch of wires and stuff on here. I may have to disconnect these. If so, I'm going to try and get some pictures, because these connectors basically all look the same. And we'll see what happens. So yeah, be back. Alright, I think I've taken out enough screws, and I've had to disconnect a bunch of little connectors on this thing. So hopefully now, without having to take this whole thing out, I'll be able to disconnect the sensor and hopefully get access to these screws and get this darn card out of here. So, again, we'll see. I'll be back. Okay, that was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. So it turns out I had to take off two screws once I had access on this side and this side, disconnect this thermal sensor, and then there was an extra screw on the side here keeping it attached, the heatsink attached to this mount. And then once I got that loose, the whole thing came off. So, okay, progress. So now I'll just take the heatsink apart and hopefully I get this thing in the oven and baked, and then fingers crossed I can get the whole thing back together again and test it. So we'll see. Alright, it's loose. So I loosened up the top screws, which seemed to loosen up the bottom portion of this, which had this clamp installed. And then I was able just to pop the card right off. So I think I'll just move some of these foam bits and pop it in the oven as directed. Alright, well, I have the oven preset, graphics card, dirty cookie sheet, and my custom-made stands for the card. So we're just going to set her on there and plonk her in the oven for 10 minutes, and then take it out, let it cool down, and assemble the whole thing and pray it works. Alright, it's out of the oven, so we just gotta let it cool down and and we see. Did it work? I hope it did. It was a whole lot of effort to take this machine apart, so yeah, we'll see in a bit. While I'm waiting for the card to cool down, I just wanted to point out a little casualty of war. So my tweezers, I broke the top off one of them. So there we go, it'll focus. But anyway, while it was out, I did take the opportunity to just kind of dust it out a little bit. But yeah, so we'll see. Okay, it's been about 45 minutes or so. The card is completely cool to the touch. So I'm gonna put some thermal paste on this thing and try and assemble it back in the case. Alright, I think I'm about an hour into this now. So I got the card back on, but it turns out, guess where the RAM was? At the very bottom. So I've been struggling to put the board back in ever since. So I got the RAM out because it needs to go through the slot at the bottom, which I should have checked, but I didn't know. So now I got the RAM out, so I'm going to try and reseat the motherboard. So, alright. Okay, well, I think I just about have everything back together. So all the screws, except for these two, all the connectors, so here, 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 and then down here is the power, and then two other ones over here are all back in. All the screws are in, but for some reason, frustratingly, these two just, well, they're lined up, I just can't get them to connect. And I do know they're the right ones because the one here still has the warranty void sticker on it, but it just won't grab. So as far as I can tell, everything else is lined up. The ports on the machine are lined up. So it seems like it's good. So I think I'm just going to put the screen on. I'm not going to finalize it and see if it fires up. And if it is, then we'll look at that hard drive problem. All right, well, I think that took me another hour or so just to figure out how to get it all back in. And also, I got the RAM back in as well. So that's on the bottom here. So we're good there. All right, well, we'll fire it up in a minute. All right, well, here's the moment of truth. I got it back together temporarily. I just put two screws in the top here on the screen. Then I have my wedge in here so I can get the bezel off easy. But I have a keyboard and a mouse connected to the back. So hold on to your butts. Smoke test. Hopefully nothing catches on fire and turns on. Let's see what happens. I got the chime. Got an Apple logo. Let's see what happens. There's a loading bar. Sure you can see that. I don't see any lines on the screen, so that's a plus. But yeah, let's see if it boots up or not. If not, then I'll try and go into the diagnostic mode and see if I can run that test again for the hard drive and see if it's bad or not. If it is, then I'll just pop this apart and I'm going to remove that hard drive and I'll put a new one in there and see if I can get this thing going again. Ideally, and I debated on whether or not to do this or not, but over here in this corner of the screen behind the CD-ROM drive is my 1 terabyte SSD, and that has all the data I care about on it. So the hard drive that's in the center has the OS, so that's less critical, since if that thing actually died, I can just put another one in. So looks like we're still loading here, so we'll let it go for a little bit and Yeah, hopefully this thing will actually do something. But definitely, I say definitely a success for all so far, considering all the amount of work that had to go into disassembling and reassembling this computer. So many different driver bits. I can't believe how many they have. I think I used 3 or 4 different bits here. Um, and again, I ended up breaking my tweezers here. Just futzing around trying to get I think some of the connectors off. Yeah, that's what broke when I was trying to pull the connectors off, because you have to try and pull by the socket and not the wire. Otherwise you'll break them, since some of those connectors are just so tiny. And they're so fiddly to get back on. Um, so yeah, let's see. It's still moving. So hopefully it keeps going here, and it boots into the OS. Because I think this is about, I'd say, a good half a day project. Again, I did this not realizing my mistake that the RAM was on the bottom here. So that definitely made futzing around with the motherboard harder than it needed to be. Oh. So it looks like we booted into the diagnostic. So I'm guessing that the hard drive is actually bad in this. Yeah, and before, this is a plus. When I booted into this, you would actually see the color bars on the side here. So I think that GPU fix actually worked. So yeah, I'm going to pause this for now and have a look at it and see if I can get this thing going, and I'll be back. So I just went a little further in. Again, when I tried to boot into this utility earlier, this is where it would just white screen. So I'm just running it on my first hard drive, that Macintosh HD. HD2 is the one, my SSD, where I care about saving all my data. So yeah, let's see if this thing actually tests bad. I may have to reboot this again, and I think when you open up the other diagnostic, when you hold down the D key on the keyboard and boot it up, it boots into that internet diagnostic, and that's where I was seeing, I forget the error code now, but it indicated that the drive was bad. So seems like it's okay. So I guess I'll try it again and see if it boots, and if not, I'll go back into the separate utility and see if it's still throwing that error code. And just for good measure, I just ran the same utility on my second hard drive, and that one seems to test okay too. Okay, well, I just rebooted and told it to use HD1 as my drive, and it took a little bit, but it just booted into the OS. So I think that is a success. So I'm going to try, Wi-Fi and all that stuff, make sure it still works. But yeah, I think I might just be able to button this thing up, because it just booted off the drive. So I'm going to go with that's good. So I'm going to just test the Wi-Fi, reboot it, run still run that diagnostic, and see what happens. But this is great. Yesterday we were just getting as far as a white screen, and sometimes with color bars, and now we're back in the OS. So success. Alright, like I said, I just rebooted, held the D key down. It opens up this Apple hardware test, so I'm just going to run that and just see if I get the same error code or not. I did test the Wi-Fi before I booted or rebooted, and that seemed to work fine, so I didn't miss any connections there. I do see some fuzzies on the screen here, so I definitely have to pop this bezel back off and just clean the screen off, because I can see some stuff there. But yeah, hopefully this thing it'll come up and recognize all my RAM, 16 gigs, and not show any more errors. And if so, then
I'm gonna button this thing up and call it a success. So I'm gonna click the test here. It'll take a minute to run, so I'll just come back when it's done.
Okay, well, I think I got everything set back up again, so we're just going to power it on and see if everything still works. I buttoned all the screws back up. I still left my spacer in there. I cleaned the screen. The only two screws I wasn't able to get in were those two for that, I believe it's the CPU mount, which is a little bothersome. But considering all the effort I went through just to put the thing back together, I just stowed them in my iFixit kit, just in case I need to worry about them later. But yeah, it looks like it's working. I think the last thing I just need to test is just to use the About This Mac. Has all my RAM. Display seems good. Has my 2 hard drives. And let me see, I think the last thing I wanted to test was the webcam. Let's make sure that works. Which, yeah, looks like that works. So, yeah, I think it's working. I did put the battery, or not the battery, but the cover back on in for the memory area. I did end up canceling that earlier diagnostic test. It looked like it was just going to take a really long time. It wasn't sure if it actually froze or not, but it did let me reboot. So I'm going to call that a win. Okay, one last thing, and I know I keep saying that, but I noticed that I had really loud fan noise for some reason. And I'm not sure why. I thought maybe it was CPU related, but oddly, I looked the question up and it said to change the plug that the computer's using. So I did that, and yeah, now it seems to be reasonable. So yeah, the computer's back up and running. Wi-Fi works. I may actually use that to get onto the internet with it. Yeah, the camera works. So I got all the plugs correct. And yeah, the only thing I'm doing now is just turning the drives back on just so they'll sync back to my backup system. But it seems like a win. No vertical lines anymore. I don't know if you remember those from the earlier video when I reported the problem, but it had those vertical bars with the Apple logo. Those are gone, and it starts up and seems to work fine. So definite win for the tutorials that claim that baking the CPU, not the CPU, but the video card works, because it seems like it works. It's back up and running, and I think maybe it was a red herring about that error on the hard drive. Maybe it was all video related. So once again, I just wanted to have a quick summary there. I definitely learned a lot. As I've gone back and forth, I could definitely take the iMac apart a lot faster now. And I've learned a lot along the way where the memory's at. I should have done that first to take the memory cards out. There's 2 screws that for the CPU heatsink. I actually didn't need to take those out. It didn't dawn on me earlier, but whoever installed the second SSD for me didn't need to remove them, because that warranty screw was still in place, so I actually didn't need to take those out at all. You win some, you lose some, and yeah, I chalk it up as a learning experience. But now iMac is working, and I didn't have to buy a new one, so phew. So yeah, thanks again. I hope you enjoyed the videos, and hope that they were helpful to somebody. So bye. All right, so it's 2 days later. I needed the following Friday, once I got the computer working, to use it for work. So now it's Saturday. It's been bugging me that these 2 screws weren't in here, so I took it apart, and I was able to get my hand behind the board and push the heatsink forward, and now I got these 2 screws solidly in place. So now I'm just going to button it all back up again and fire it up. Okay, we're back and the iMac is officially complete. Everything is up and running. I went through about my Mac and tested everything there. So CPU, display, memory, hard drives, all that stuff's good to go. Then webcam, audio, video, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, fans. I have a utility that'll allow me to spin the fans up so I can hear all those running. All the temperatures look good. So this thing is officially buttoned up. And I also now have the peace of mind that those last two screws are in place. So there's nothing else extraneous floating around. So the last thing I need to do is just finish editing this video on the iMac, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the videos, and thanks a lot. Bye.